Our next panelist, William Voegeli, is a senior editor of the Claremont Review of Books. He's the author of Never Enough, America's Limitless Welfare State, and also The Pity Party, a mean-spirited diatribe against liberal compassion. Get them on Amazon.com. You've read his work in National Review, The Weekly Standard, and the Los Angeles Times. Mr. Voegeli received his PhD in political science from Loyola University. Please welcome William Voegeli.
Thank you, Susan. Ladies and gentlemen, nice to be with you. I think like all the other speakers, I received an email from Karen a couple of weeks ago saying, above all, have some positive solutions and outlooks. We don't want people getting to the end of this conference and going out and contacting their realtors. So emphasize that the glass is half full instead of half empty, in other words. But when you think about that phrase, if one is true, the other is necessarily true. So the point is not really to pick one or the other, I think, but to understand the correlation of forces, see the entire glass, see what the situation is. That's what I'll try to do in my brief remarks today. The thing we should remember about in looking at a particular state is that because of American federalism, we have a situation where it is not necessary to pursue or think about or seek a metaphysical solution, the best answer to the question of what is the best level of taxation and regulation and government spending. Under our system, it's possible for 50 different states to come up with 50 different answers to this question. And within those states, for there to be further variation still. Bakersfield is going to govern itself differently than Santa Monica. So the advantage would seem to be that people who favor a higher level of taxation and regulation and a package deal that involves more government activism and spending can gravitate to the states that provide that. People who favor a leaner package deal, want minimal government, don't want the government to do much, just to be left alone, can gravitate to the states that function that way. It would seem that in this regard, us red state types have a real advantage, which is that the package deal that we think best is, in a way, the easiest one to deliver. We don't really want much for government, and for the government to do what we want, it only has to hold taxes down, to keep regulations few and simple, and to have the government provide certain crucial services. If you're a blue state type, on the other hand, and you want the government to do lots of things, it at least in theory, is not enough just for the government to be busy, to be active. At some point, the government needs to be successful. It actually has to deliver on these things. However, despite the logic of that, the empirical evidence suggests that there is a strong blue state advantage. If you look at ratings of groups like the Tax Foundation and CEO Magazine, I'm often struck by the fact that the places that are best for business, have the best tax systems, are places that do not have a lot of natural economic advantages in the competition for residents, taxpayers, jobs, capital. North Dakota always does very well. Nothing, maybe some of you are from there, nothing against the place, but it's not a place that people, for its own sake, are drawn to. On the other hand, always at the bottom of the list are California and New York. New York has Wall Street. That's a goose, a golden goose it probably can't kill. California has beautiful weather, environment, Silicon Valley, Hollywood. I think the grim moral of this story is that states tax and regulate as much as they can and simplify and streamline only as much as they must. If you're in North Dakota, you don't have many other calling cards, so you had better provide a good, lean tax code and a regulatory environment. But if you're in California or New York, where Wall Street is going to exist anyway, where Hollywood and Silicon Valley are probably going to exist anyway, there is this attitude, where else are they going to go? They're not going to move Silicon Valley to Minot, North Dakota. We're going to tax those guys. And so there is, I think, a trend in the wrong direction. As people sort themselves out in terms of their preferences, high taxes, low taxes, regulations, so forth, they can vote with their votes and they can vote with their feet. California is one of 6 states that has a Democratic governor and Democratic control of both houses of the legislature. It's the only one of the 10 most populous. The others are Oregon, Hawaii, Delaware, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. By contrast, there are 26 states now where there is a Republican governor and Republican control of the legislature. You've heard the phrase from Justice Louis Brandeis, laboratories of democracy, which implies that the various states can try different approaches and adapt the ones that work best. But that's only a valid metaphor if we assume that what everybody thinks of as a success is the same. I'm increasingly struck by the fact that all politics is not so much local as it is tribal. We don't agree one another on what it means for a policy to succeed. And a lot of politics is not really about the policy that works best, but about affirming that we're going to live with and line up with people like us and against people unlike us. I think part of this is, in fact, the sense that voting is no longer efficacious, that government is no longer efficacious, that it doesn't do what it says it's going to do. Politicians give these speeches, they enunciate these principles, nothing much happens, nothing seems to get better. People feel like if my vote isn't going to make any difference in terms of how government functions, in terms of how my family lives, I can at least use it to sort of convey my grievances, to choose teams, to choose sides. And so there's this increasing contentiousness in our political life. Voting with their feet is something that is in the short term, a control on how a state functions. But I think your time horizons need to be adjusted in an astute sort of way. If red state types like us decide to leave California, we've had it. If we do what Chuck DeVore did and move to Texas in the belief that things are just so far gone here that you might as well go to a state where views like yours are acceptable. Instead of chastening California and getting the people who remain behind to say, whoa, we better think about this. We better find ways to make our state's governance a little more successful looking for the red state types who are putting up the for sale signs. The trend is actually likely to be self-aggravating rather than self-correcting. The blue state types left behind are going to say, good, they're gone. Now we can do even more of the stuff that we want to do and that they've been thwarting and making difficult. So back to the glass half empty and glass full. The word, I think the point is really not to be optimistic or pessimistic. It's to be realistic, to be resolute, to be principled, and to be honorable. The word conservatism conveys, I think, all of those qualities. If the things that we care about, the things that we like and admire, that we think are good and necessary for wise governance, if they could sort of take care of themselves, if they could recommend themselves and people would see their virtues and not need to be reminded of them, there wouldn't be a need for conservatism. The conservative project implies that things that are valuable are also inherently vulnerable, and it is the work of people who understand their value to protect them. So my closing message is, whether you stay or go, however, is that the conservative project requires us to, whether we think we're winning or losing, to fight the honorable fight. We're going to, in the course of events, we'll win some battles and lose some, but it's better to lose fighting for what's good than to win having already conceded too many of the crucial points. Thank you.